A good life is a life built around fulfilling work, play, relationships, and lifelong learning. Welcome to Good Life Conversations, where we explore the stories and strategies of inspiring everyday people who are striving to create a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. Hi there, welcome to this Good Life Conversation. My name is Jay. I'm your host and the founder of Discover Year. And today I'm having a conversation with Tara Tennant. Welcome, Tara.
Hi,
Thanks
happy
for
to
doing
be here.
this.
Oh, it's
Yes.
my pleasure.
And so Tara is a financial advisor. This is work that she has been doing for quite some time. And as she may
Mhm.
tell you about, had a break from this career for a period as well, and then returned to it. But she's a financial advisor with Desjardins Financial. And Tara and I met at a conference a number of years ago. And one thing that she's been doing that's been really, really helpful for our students at Discover Year is she's been running some financial planning and budgeting workshops, which
Mhm.
are always very useful to our students. So she's been doing that for a number of years. Given her skills, she's a great fit to do that. And the students always appreciate it. So Tara, I'd love to jump right in with the first question we always start with. This is Good Life
Mhm.
Conversations. The reason we call it such is that it's about more than just what people do for a job or a career.
Mhm.
We really want to learn about people's, how they stay healthy, what's important to them, how they find meaning and purpose in their world. So if you could
Yeah.
just tell us, briefly describe kind of a typical day for you. What time do you get up? Do you have any morning rituals? What time do you start work? How long do you work for? What do you do during the day? And then, do you have any specific ways you wind the day down?
Sure. Okay. So I will say that a typical day, I'm usually up at 6 or shortly after. And recently, a client recommended to me a podcast by Mel Robbins. And one of the first episodes I listened to was about some hot tips about how to be more productive or how to claim your day. And so the two things that I do that I took from that, one is I go outside as soon as possible, even if it's just to go stand out on my deck and just breathe for a minute. I have a little dog who's sleeping under my desk right now. So she likes to go out first thing in the morning. So that's super important because it helps your circadian rhythm, right? So I find if I don't do that, then I'm more tired during the day. So that's one thing I'd say for sure. The second thing I do is I don't look at my phone for the first hour that I'm awake.
Hmm.
So that first hour is like my time where I get to do what I want to do. And I have a very busy job and I have two kids and a husband. So a lot of other people get my time throughout the day. So that first hour is mine. And that sort of sets the tone.
Hmm.
My commute is really far. I work in my basement. So I'm remote most of the time. So I eventually will make a coffee, come downstairs, turn on the computer, get myself going. I spend a lot of time talking to people, having meetings, talking to clients. And I will say, like as part of my day, one of the things we've done to be more productive is we have meeting days and then we have focus days. So there's some days like, and I'm a bit of an introvert. So if I've seen a lot of people, I get super tired and I have to recharge. So I really like having a couple of days where like I don't see clients, I don't have team meetings. I'm just doing stuff to catch up.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of my work day. The other 20% of the time I'm not at home, I'm traveling. So we have an office in Kingston and an office in Ottawa. So I'll travel there for the day to have client meetings or team meetings. And then at night, I don't have a ton of routines for at night, but I always check in with my kids and my family just to make sure everybody's okay and see, kind of that check in. How did the day go? What do you need? How's everybody doing? Just to sort of make sure that we're all connected, at least for part of the day. And then I binge watch Netflix or Prime to unwind. And if I don't get that, I'm really miserable. And
All
then I
right.
try and sleep regularly. 10 o'clock. That's it. Don't talk to me.
Okay. So 10 to 6 is your, typical sleep window.
Yeah. And my phone is on silent, like bedtime mode. Like, no, nothing gets through.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about, if you wouldn't mind, other than stepping outside at least for a few minutes in that kind of 1 hour of Tara time, what do
Hmm.
you like to do? Is there something specific you tend to do in the morning?
Yeah, so I try and read a little bit, something that's not work related. I was doing yoga for a little while, but I just stopped doing it, so I should probably do that again. I don't do a lot of yoga, but there's like one sun salutation like I learned which is kind of nice. And I try and journal, although I hate journaling. Like, I really don't like it, but everybody tells me I need to do it. And I know that when I do it, I feel better. So that makes me angry. But if I just don't feel motivated, I'll just write a gratitude or something.
Mm,
And that's good. And I make coffee. I have to have coffee.
yes. So
Hmm.
it's the journaling thing is kind of like that bittersweet of you understand fundamentally that it's beneficial to you,
Yes.
but there's just something about it
Yes.
that you don't enjoy.
There's
Yeah.
something about it. So I'm one of those people that really it benefits from prompts,
Mm,
right? Because I hate that moment of sitting down with a blank page, like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? I like a prompt. So again, Mel Robbins is great for prompts. And there's lots of prompts out there. You can actually buy journals that have a prompt for every day. So
mm,
that's something I really benefit from. Just give me an idea and then I can write it out.
yeah. I
But
really connect to that. And usually for me, I like to read because sometimes if I haven't been reading anything that is of interest to me recently, I'll sit down and my brain like it doesn't know where to go. It needs a bit of
yeah,
direction or spark. That's what usually reading for me is. I don't read a lot at one time, but I gotta read a couple
yeah,
paragraphs or a few pages and it sparks ideas. And then my brain starts
yeah,
going and it's good. But until I get that spark, it's hard to find. So I connect to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it for sure.
Okay. Good, thank you. And this idea about the phone, about shutting it down in
Mm,
the evening, not looking at it for an hour in the morning. Can you tell us more? This is a common theme that we hear from a lot of our
yeah.
mentors or similar. So where did
Mm.
that come from for you, and why do you do that?
Yeah, so the why I don't look at it in the morning is because I feel like the phone is just people trying to get my attention, right? Like whether it's social, and I will admit I'm not on socials, like I try and avoid them at all costs. Um, just because again, it's more people vying for my attention. And I have to give my clients attention. I have to give my team attention. I have to give my kids and my family and my friends attention. And I only have so much attention to give. And so that hour in the morning is for me, for self-care. And without any interruptions, without anybody, without my brain starting to think about, oh, what did this politician say yesterday? Or what's in the news? Or what is this email? Or like at that point in the day, I no longer have control. But for that first hour, that's mine. That's
Mm.
for me. I will do what I want to do.
And how long have you had that practice for?
I started that just before Christmas last year.
Right.
Yeah, it really changed things for me because
What did
it
you
was
notice?
things were starting to get challenging. I noticed that I was really anxious all day, every day. And I needed to find I needed it felt like taking control back, right? So at least if I can control that first hour and set myself up, I am a big fan of setting myself up for success. Like a lot of times in life, things go off the rails. And if I can put some things in place so that it's managing risk, right? For me, it's a lot of what I do in my career is manage risk. And so if I can put some things in place that even if something does go wrong, at least I've got those buffers. And that for me is setting myself up for the day and like giving myself a boost and having the energy to do what I need to do throughout the day, if that makes sense.
Makes a ton of sense. And again, as I mentioned, a lot of our mentors have similar kind of guidelines. And one thing that's common
Mhm.
as well for many of our mentors is they'll say, like you did, you've got teenage children, so you're not
Mhm.
21, And this is something you've
Yeah.
implemented for 8 months. So that's a really important
Yeah.
message that we try to share with our students is that you're going to be trying stuff for a long time. You're going to fall down. You might get into the phone again, but you can kind of put it
Yeah.
away.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's imperfect, but important to
Yeah.
note that you do feel a difference when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt a lot better. So when I first started doing it, I didn't look at the phone. I did my yoga. I did my journaling. I had this like whole plan, and I have fallen off like in the summer. I don't do some of the things that I was doing in the winter, but I feel like that's okay. I'm not going to get down on myself for it. I mean, life is life and things happen and stuff gets hard and then it gets easier and it gets hard again. Um, but I think coming into the winter and especially with the less light, like I'm going to wake up in the dark and that's harder to wake up in the dark, right? So I think if I know that I know how I'm going to feel, I can start, maybe I'll get the yoga back going again or, some other things that boost my spirit in the morning.
Hmm. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned we like to talk about we've learned over the years that students are very interested not only in the work that our mentors do, but what do they do for fun?
Mm,
What are their hobbies? What are their,
yeah.
side passions or, sports or music or clubs? So what do you do for, you mentioned yoga that you try to do that as a practice, but what are some of your
Yeah.
hobbies either now or in the past?
So I don't have a ton of hobbies. I will say that. But I do love books and TV and movies. I've always been obsessive about movies. So that's something if I need to recharge, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be in bed with popcorn watching movies.
Mm.
Um, I also volunteer. So I've done a lot of volunteering. My mom was the coordinator of volunteer resources for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. So I learned very early on the power of volunteering. Um, and so I'm was on the board of directors for our local agricultural society. So that's a fair, like our local fair. So I've done that for about 13 years and I volunteer with our church as well.
Wow, very cool. And you mentioned the power
Mhm.
of volunteering, and I think
Yeah.
we have this community service project and Discovery, or two
Mm.
projects students do. So I'd love to hear because it's important
Yeah.
to us too. What is your perspective on the power of volunteering? What does that mean?
Yeah. So volunteering is work experience for one. Um, I remember when I applied for my first job in this industry, I had put under volunteering because I had way more volunteer experience than I did actually like working experience. And I remember the hiring manager saying to me, she's like, "Why did you put all this under volunteer? Like, this is all great experience. I would never know."
Hmm.
Like, right? If it was paid or not. And so um, that's where I gained so much experience that is useful in my career.
Hmm.
So much.
Hmm.
Like it's just been fantastic. And especially being on boards and being part of the fair. Like talk about a massive project, right?
Hmm.
That you put on every single year that has all these different pieces that all have to work together. And they're always looking for volunteers. Like even if it's tough to find a job, it is not hard to find a place to volunteer.
Hmm.
And it also helps you understand what you like and what you don't like without the commitment of being in a job, right? Like
Totally.
you can volunteer and do some marketing. You could volunteer and work in an office. You can volunteer and work with, in healthcare or whatever. And you're not committed. It's not your salary. But you can go and try so many things out. And that's all like personal stuff, but all you're also having an impact in your community. You're meeting people, you're making connections, right? Like it's just, I can't say enough about volunteering. It's
Yeah,
been really important in my life and career, like
yeah.
genuinely.
I think it's great. It's great to highlight it because there is quite a bit of, understandably so, quite a bit of dialogue in today's world for young people around their rights as workers and their human
Yes.
rights. And that's, of course, important. And at the
Hmm.
same time, there's not a lot of conversation around the nuance of, you're volunteering. and you're not being
Mm,
paid for that. So what are the ethical boundaries? And I think like no one ever questioned the idea of volunteering or, giving your time for free. Whereas now there's quite a bit of kind of conversation that maybe
mm.
disincentivizes young people to do it. So it's great to hear how much it's brought to you
Oh my gosh, yeah.
over your life. Yeah,
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Hmm.
And so just for the sake of kind of putting a number to it, I know it's
Yeah.
going to be varied, but like how many hours a week or a year do you tend to try to designate in terms of volunteer hours?
Yeah, so that's really hard to say. I think before I came back into being a financial advisor, I did more. My kids like need me, right? So I have to be around for that. But I would say, oh my gosh, that's a really hard question. I'm gonna guess about 100 hours a year.
Okay. So a
Maybe
couple
like
hours a
it's
week.
not constant, right? Like the fair is in the summertime. So I'll put a bunch of hours in August because that's when the fair is, but I don't really do very much with it the rest of the time.
Hmm.
And church, I'm on the board, so that's a little bit every Sunday, but um here and there.
Yeah, manageable. And that's an important
Yeah.
message too, that it's there are a lot of opportunities. And I think it's amazing to hear you say, hey, anyone, people are dying for volunteers. And sometimes our students haven't experienced that directly. So it's important to remind them, that
Mm,
they go to one place and they want to volunteer there, and that place is not open for volunteers because it's the most popular place to volunteer. But there are so
right.
many churches and fairs, and there's so many things where people could volunteer. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
just get connect. I mean, everywhere. Anywhere
Yes.
there's a not-for-profit. Um, Even I wonder if Charity Village even is a website that I
Yeah.
know that's a not-for-profit, like if you're looking for a job, but I wonder if they post for volunteers too. Hmm,
Yeah. There are like
maybe.
Volunteer Ottawa in Ottawa. There are
Yeah.
websites certainly.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the questions that we always like to ask is about failure. So, we try to help our students over the course of the year really understand what failure means and how useful it is, and it all depends
Hmm,
on how you frame it. But can you tell us about an important failure you've had and what you learned from it?
for sure. So first off, I love failure. I think it's fantastic. And this is a realization I've come to in the last 3 months. But the most important failure I ever had was when I was 16, and it's one of the first and biggest failures that I had. So when I was 16, my mom is visually impaired, so she doesn't have a driver's license, and she raised me as a single mom in a rural community, right? So we walked everywhere. So when I turned 16, it was really, really important for me to get a driver's license because that meant me and mom could have a car and we could not walk for groceries anymore. And I went to do my road test and I failed it. And I was so distraught. Like I couldn't even. And my uncle, who had driven me to the test center, instead of letting me go in the back seat and cry all the way home, he got into the passenger seat and handed me the keys and said, "You're driving home." And I went, what are you talking about? He's like, "No, you're driving home." And he was so matter of fact about it. And I drove home holding it together. And when I got home, hyperventilated and like completely collapsed and freaked out about it. But what I learned was resilience. And I am so grateful that he made me drive home that day because what it showed me was I can drive just fine. I just happened to fail this dumb test by this one guy, and it was his opinion on that day. I made one mistake that made you fail, right? It was like not negotiable. You do this one thing, you're done. So I took the test again. I passed. It was fine. But I'll never forget my uncle making me drive home that day because
Hmm.
I think it set the stage for other failures that happened in my life. And knowing that, yes, it sucks and you can feel crappy and that's okay, but you still have to get up and do something else the next day.
That's great. Thank you. And I think that's a great illustration of how we try to be at Discovery as well with our students is, to empathize and understand and try to understand what they're going through, and at the same time keep pushing them forward, not letting them get
Yeah.
too stagnant, if they do encounter
Yeah.
difficulties. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we don't make them hyperventilate too much, but
That was
that
the
is a
only
great
time in my
illustration.
life
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
I
Thank
was
you.
just devastated, but
And how
yeah,
did you do on the second time? Did you pass?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
did. It was fine.
Nice.
So we made it. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Great. Um, okay, thank you. I'd also love to
Sure.
know, that's a good one, because a lot of our
Yeah.
students, they're at the age where they're,
Yeah.
either starting to study for or, get their license, going for their driver. That happens a lot in
Hmm.
Discovery Year. So
Yeah.
that'll be
Yeah.
interesting for them to hear about.
Some of it
What's,
is subjective.
yes, maybe you can tell me after we stop recording, but I'm dying to know, did
Yeah.
you run a red light, a stop sign? Did you hit another
Yeah.
car? What's the one
I'll tell
irrefutable?
you, a pedestrian, I was at a stop sign and a pedestrian came up to the corner and I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, go ahead. The pedestrian said, go ahead. So I did.
Hmm,
The pedestrian had the right of way. I needed to wait and tell them to go ahead and not go anywhere.
right.
Yeah.
So
It hurt.
good
It hurt.
judgment and visual communication is frowned upon. I appreciate that. Yes. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
How about an important lesson that you've learned in your life about relationships?
Oh, uh-huh. Communication, communication. Whether it's like with my kids or if it's with my spouse or in a work environment or with my friends. Miscommunication, I think, is one of the biggest causes of conflict. And so I think it's really important, and I had to learn this over and over and over again, to listen to the other person and to just stop trying to get my point across and listen to them because somebody has to do that first, right? So my friend, my business bestie slash life bestie, taught me the phrase, tell me more.
Hmm,
And so now when things happen, I can sit back and say, okay, just tell me more about that. Help me understand.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
What an important lesson. And you may or may not know this, but tell me more. And what else? What's on your mind? These are questions that we help our students apply in their conversations with each other and hopefully with the outside world as well. That's
Yeah.
great.
Super
Thank you.
important.
Yeah.
Sure.
I suspect that those listening skills do a good service at work as well.
Mm. Hmm.
And
Yeah. It's a big part of what I do.
and we haven't talked much about it yet. So,
Mm.
for you and I, perhaps the idea of a financial advisor is fairly straightforward, but for many of our listeners, perhaps less so. So
Yeah.
can you just tell everyone a little bit about what it means to be a financial advisor?
Yeah, sure. And I will say that even the words financial advisor, like lots of people have what they think is what a financial advisor does, but there's a lot of nuance. And different advisors do different things for clients. So I'll throw that out there. So what we do is I sit down and talk with people and figure out how they're gonna spend their money, save their money, invest their money, and give away their money. So we do the whole thing from when they start out in the very beginning to we also do estate planning, which is what happens when you die, what happens to everything. So we do an everything in between. So part of that is figuring out what they want to invest in. But it's just part of it. The other part of it is where their money goes every month. And we give them some ideas about that, what some good guidelines are. We spend a lot of time teaching people about money, whether it's our clients or groups or whatever. We do that, but it's super important to ask questions. So a lot of what I do is asking questions and getting to know people because I can't make certain recommendations if I don't know everything about a person, including, and this is becoming more and more prevalent in our industry, like we're finding it more and more, is the psychology of money and how we feel about money and what drives our decisions about money. Because I could show, like, there might be some people I can show them numbers and charts and all of the things, and they still won't do it because of something that happened when they were younger. There's some kind of block there.
Mm.
So I'm really lucky in that the senior advisor I work with was once a social worker. And so she has a ton of experience in coaching
Mm.
and working with people. So that really factors in huge in what we do with people.
Yeah, I think it's such an important message to share that, any person who is helping someone in a capacity, listening skills should always really come first if you're trying to make good
Mhm.
recommendations. But what young
Yeah,
people I think often see out in the world is the experts who have the answer to everything. And the answer applies universally, regardless of what the situation might be. So,
yeah,
it's good to reinforce that. It's the same is true for me in my line of work. If I made a suggestion
yeah,
without asking people questions, it would be a bad suggestion almost all the time. But
that's right.
listening to what they need and what they want and what their background is very, very helpful. So,
Yeah.
and what would you say would be important for someone who might consider doing a career in, as a helping financially, a financial advisor or an investor, et cetera? What are the skills or attitudes that are helpful?
Yeah. So curiosity is one. And I would say curiosity and compassion.
Mm.
I also like solving complex problems. So, writing financial plans and doing this work is a complex problem. And each client comes in with all of these pieces, and we have to figure out how they go together that makes the most sense for them. So, there's that.
Mm.
And there's so many careers in this industry that aren't client facing. So even if maybe the advisor role, because you're in front of people all the time, some people just don't like that. But there's so many careers, like even our admin staff and we've got paraplanners and other people who are like working, doing analysis behind the scenes. Those people are so important. So if anything about the financial world or planning is appealing at all, I would encourage people to look at it
Mm.
because there's so much opportunity.
I love that the first two words were curiosity and compassion because I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
misunderstanding in the world, and I think very few people who are not in that industry would conceive of those two words as being the first two words. I
Mhm.
suspect they would think of other things about people who maybe are aggressive or motivated by money, or like
Yeah.
entrepreneurial maybe is still a good one that's probably
Yeah.
relevant in some cases. But I think it's
Mhm.
wow, hopefully useful for people to hear, oh, just because you work with money doesn't mean you're greedy. Interesting
Oh
concept.
my gosh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Very cool.
Greed is subjective.
Indeed, indeed, yes. And you're helping other people make more money is the hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Um,
Mhm.
okay, and so got a few minutes left, and what I would love to know, first of all, is you took this break from financial planning that you mentioned in your
Yeah.
bio, so our students will have access to that. And
Yeah.
so tell us a bit about how you kind of conceived to go into this industry and then why the
Mm.
break and then why the return.
Yeah. So, I got into this industry because I was, excuse me, on a go train with my roommate from university because she had a job interview in Toronto and I needed a job. And so I thought, well, if I dress up nice and I go with her dad on the go train, I might meet somebody who needs a summer student. So I did. And his name was John, and he was the manager of operations at a little dealer, a little mutual fund dealer. He was friends with my friend's dad, and he's like, "Yep, sure. Do you like popcorn?" I said, "I love popcorn, John. Thanks for asking." And he said, "Well, come in for an interview." And so I did, and I got the job. And then I really liked it.
Mm.
I just really liked it. And so when um, when I was there, the owner of the company asked me if I wanted to come and work for him. And so I said, sure. So that's how I got into it
Hmm.
in the
And that
first
was,
place.
sorry, that was just like you were looking for a summer job during university because we didn't mention, but you did
Yeah.
business at Trent University.
Yeah, I went to Trent for business. Yeah, imagine that.
That's in Peterborough for people who don't know Trent. It's known for maybe
Yes.
ecology or environmental studies is more perhaps.
Environmental studies, cultural studies, Canadian studies. It is not known for its business program. But hey, I did it and it was really great. It was nice and small and it was only a few hours away from home. And it's a really pretty campus.
Hmm.
And I met my husband there too.
Okay, there you
Anyways,
go.
that's a whole other story.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you worked there during the summer,
Yeah.
and then after you graduated, you went back, or?
So after I graduated, I went back. Yeah, they had actually offered to pay for my last year of university if I stayed. And I said no because I knew that I wouldn't finish if I did that. And I wanted to go back and do the full year and finish and get my degree and then go.
Okay.
So I did that. And then they hired me back, which was fantastic. And then, yeah, I ended up working for the owner of the company for the next 10 years. And he mentored me, and he's the reason I became an advisor. And yeah, so I did that for a while.
And
Yeah.
then,
And then and then um life happened and I got married to a man, not the one I met at university. He came back later. But I met somebody else and we got married and I had two kids and we got into a lot of debt and he struggled with some substance abuse issues and some other stuff. And so it didn't go well. And eventually, when I got pregnant with my second child, I decided that that was enough, that there was no way I could continue in this career with two little babies to look after and all the debt that we had and all that kind of stuff. So I left the industry. I got a divorce. I moved home to the Ottawa Valley and I worked in agriculture. Actually, I went into bookkeeping. So I didn't think that because of the debt situation that I had struggled through, I didn't think that I could get back into financial services, actually. I thought I had ruined my career completely. And so I went into bookkeeping because that was the closest thing. Did that for 10 years and then eventually got sick of what I was doing and I was bored and I needed to do something else. So I started networking, which is probably when you and I met.
yeah.
And I just talked to everybody I could possibly talk to and looked for opportunities. And eventually I found one in the advisor that I work for now. And I said, I really think I want to get back in the industry. And she said, if you're going to do that, you're going to come and work for me. And so I did all of my licensing tests again because I had to redo everything because it had been a big gap. I redid it all. I started working for her, and I have never been happier in my life.
Very cool. And why do you think she said if you're going to do that, then you need to come and work for me?
Because we are very similar. She is also incredibly compassionate. We both share some concerns about the financial services industry as it is today. And we want to break a few molds about what people think financial advisors are or should be.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I think that's why.
So
And I
you had
did some
a,
really good work for her.
yeah. So you did excellent. Whatever. She saw a great amount of
Yeah.
potential and competence in you, and then she probably saw this personal side of how you could interact and interface with clients in a meaningful way and show them that compassion, which she understood was important.
Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
Very cool. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
too about the difficulties in your journey. I'm sure perhaps the
Yeah.
students will have some questions about that, but it's really
Yeah.
important for young people to hear how people, come through those things. And it happens to a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think if my uncle hadn't made me drive home that day, that I would have had the inspiration and the drive to redo all my licensing and come back to an industry that I literally thought I had failed out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great message too. And I myself have one of my most meaningful failures was at the same age, around 16, wasn't
Mm.
driving, but I cut from a hockey team that was my only goal in life.
Mm.
And I got
Hmm.
onto another team. And so my parents kind of played that role. They said, hey, this other team might take you.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I think it's a great message because our students are in that age stage of life where they can really build that muscle and,
Yeah.
with very few consequences in discovery, or, they can fail a
Yeah.
lot and learn how to
Yeah.
bounce back from it. So thank you.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay,
Got
two
it.
more questions. One is a quick one. You mentioned you're a movie
Hey.
lover, and I would love to
Uh-huh.
wrap up with a quick fun one here. Favorite movie ever, if you had to choose, what
Mm.
is it?
Probably the original Star Wars.
Okay.
If I could only watch one movie, although Return of the Jedi and Empire, they're all good. But the first one I had memorized before I was like 7 years old. So I would have to go with that one.
Okay, the
Hmm.
trilogy or just the one original?
Well, you're making me pick one. So if I have to pick one, that's it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very cool.
Yeah. Leia is a badass, okay? Like seriously. She was a girl boss before girl boss was a
Mm,
thing. And she
gotcha.
really inspired me throughout my life.
That's
Hmm.
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
last question. We always end with the same last question. So we live in a confusing world sometimes. These are called good life conversations because we really
Yeah.
want to help young people think more and better understand how to make meaning and build a purposeful, fulfilling life for themselves. And we know that's not just through work for anybody. We know also it can be confusing because of social media and some of the mixed signals that the young people get today around what success looks like. So
Yeah.
if you're putting yourself in the shoes of one of our 18-year-old students at Discovery Year, what advice would you offer them in terms of leading a meaningful, good life?
I would say success is relative and don't let anybody else define what success means for you, right? Success for me is having a career that I feel like I'm making an impact in people's lives and in the world. And I make enough money that I'm comfortable and I know I'm saving something for retirement and my kids are looked after. Like I'm happy with that. That makes me happy. Um, I want to have enough energy at the end of the day that I can be there for my friends and family and be an ear for them. So I would say if there was one thing, that would be it.
So take the time to think about and explore what success could mean for them as an individual versus just accepting the traditional model of whatever success might look like out in the universe.
Yeah, there's too much flash out there. We live in a world, and I mean, I'm a little older than you, Jay, and I grew up before cell phones and before social media. Um, but we still had TV and movies and stuff, and we still saw what successful people looked like, right? But in my industry, I know that the person with the most money in the room isn't necessarily the person who looks like they have the most money in the room, right? And also remember that money isn't everything,
Hmm.
right? That it just isn't. It's a tool. And I'll talk about this, in our session
Hmm.
eventually. But yeah, just keep that in mind. And we don't have to wear everything on our sleeves, right? We don't wear our success out in the open. We don't walk around with bars above our heads that says how successful we are, right? That's internal. That's a mindset. So keep that in mind.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks, Tara. It's great chatting with you. We could go on, but we'll wrap it up here. And I know our students will be very interested to learn from you and then to chat more
Mm.
about your life and your career as well. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks for listening. This has been another Good Life conversation. We hope to see you at the next one.